Shabbat Shalom. For anyone looking to get married in the D.C. area, or as is the case with me, occasionally find yourself officiating at weddings up and down the eastern seaboard, Dumbarton Oaks is a venue as beautiful as any. A mansion, museum, and gardens in the leafy Georgetown neighborhood of Washington, D.C. For the rest of us, but really for all of us, Dumbarton Oaks is a venue that holds incredible significance for 20th century history, playing host to a historic conference precisely 80 years ago this month. It was the height of the Second World War, the months following the D-Day invasion, when between August 21st and October 7th of 1944, delegates from the United States, United Kingdom, Soviet Union, and China convened to discuss plans for an as-yet realized post-war Europe. Officially known as the Washington Conversations on International Organizations, delegates from the Big Four deliberated over proposals for the establishment of an organization to maintain peace and security in the world. When the conference concluded, strangely on October 7th, the delegates left with the basic framework and structure for what we know today as the United Nations, officially founded shortly thereafter in 1945. Institutions and words that we take for granted, like the General Assembly, the Security Council, the International Court of Justice, and beyond, all ideas first expressed in those waning days of the summer of 1944. In raising the anniversary of Dumbarton Oaks on UN Week, my aim is not to weigh in on the success of the conference, a subject about which much has been written. Nor, for that matter, is my point to opine on the enduring worth of the UN, a subject about which I imagine most everyone in this room and in this world has an opinion. My point is more modest, to note that the conference even happened at all. Even and especially as a horrific war was being waged in the European and Pacific theater, active discussions were taking place on a post-war order. Who would prevent and remove future threats to peace and acts of aggression? How could friendly nations work collaboratively to strengthen universal peace? How could an international spirit of cooperation be achieved on social, economic, and humanitarian fronts? No different than other leaders at other times, the Civil War, World War I, the Iraq War, attention was given to a future vision even as blood flowed in the present. Wage war by sea, land, and air, in Churchill's words. Do all this and plan for the day after. We are fast approaching the anniversary, the one-year mark since October 7th. The war between Israel and its enemies show no sign of abating. In many respects, it's heating up and spinning out of control. Notable as the anniversary of Dumbarton Oaks may be, its application to our present moment is limited. This is not World War II. Israel's war with Hamas, Hezbollah, and other Iranian proxies will be an open-ended grind on multiple fronts. The hate-filled ideology presently driving global anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism makes no allowance for any Jewish presence in the Middle East. I'm reminded of Golda Meir's comment, "You cannot negotiate peace with someone who seeks to kill you." As long as the hostages remain captive, as long as Israel's citizens are in harm's way, as long as Jewish lives are at risk around the world, our attention and defense is in the here and now, the urgent needs of the nation of Israel and the global people of Israel. And yet, we must consider the day after. Focus, as our attention is, and must remain on the real and present dangers facing Israel and the Jewish people, we need to plant seeds for a time beyond that which we are presently experiencing. As Jews committed to a vision of a secure Jewish and democratic state of Israel, at a certain point, one must acknowledge that that vision comes with a commitment to Palestinian self-determination and shared society. The roots of our present ills are not hard to name. Decades upon decades of Arab rejectionism, intransigence, and violence. There is nothing that justifies the violence of October 7th or any kind on any day. But in pointing out the failures of the other side, it doesn't permit us to ignore our own role. In rendering Palestinian aspirations stillborn, in propping up the most extreme elements of Palestinian and Israeli leadership, in stifling moderate voices on both sides, the present Israeli government has abdicated its agency in bringing about the day after. Israel must articulate a vision of side-by-side coexistence, even and perhaps especially when it is difficult to do so. Israel need not apologize for defending its citizens or waging war against its enemy, but the present government's inability to articulate a next-day plan is a failure, morally, diplomatically, and spiritually. Morally, because without a vision for the day after, the daily sacrifices being made by the IDF soldiers, the losses of Palestinian lives, are happening without an expressed outcome, a quagmire that will eat away at Israel from within. Diplomatically, because without a vision for the day after, Israel does itself no favors on the world stage, a quagmire that will eat away at Israel from without. And spiritually, because without a vision for the day after, the citizens and people of Israel will lose that which has kept us going from the start, hope. As long as Jews have been Jews, our sense of self has been secured in a time and circumstance that often extends beyond the horizon of our experience and lifetime. Abraham's first call to a land that I will show you was a promise that was not to be realized by him, but by his descendants. Moses' charge to the enslaved Israelites that they follow him out of Egypt and the promised land was a vision that we know none of them, not even Moses, would fulfill. Consider the very name of this week's Torah reading, Ki Tavo, when you enter, a list of rituals and declarations of do's and don'ts, of blessings and curses, all situated in an anticipated future which the reader knows and the ancient Israelite knew applied to a reality beyond their length of years. I'm reminded of that old joke apropos of UN Week, when the delegations of Korea, India, and Israel gained an audience with God to inquire when peace would come. To the Korean, God replied, "Not in your lifetime." So to the Indian, God replied, "Not in your lifetime." To the Israeli, God replied, "Not in my lifetime." With war so hot and peace so elusive, the joke rubs raw. But it's a joke that serves as a window into our essence, the agonies and aspirations of our being. We look and work towards the future, whether or not that future will be ours to realize. It's a message that needs to be heard in the Middle East, and I would also urge you here on the Upper East. I imagine many here feel the exhaustion that I do, faced as we are with a war seemingly without end, taking its toll on Israelis, on innocent Palestinians, a war being fought on so many fronts. We are all emotionally connected, and yet we're a step away and removed. We're not the ones receiving the red alerts. We're not the ones sending our children into harm's way. We do what we can in acts of tzedakah, trauma relief, and solidarity, but our hopelessness is undoubtedly rooted in a sense of helplessness. What can we do? What should we be doing? So while there is no one answer, no clear answer, permit me to offer a thought that I've had of late. A thought impelled by my firm belief that as much as Israel needs to win this war, Israel needs to have a plan for the day after. Even and especially in this dark hour, when the threats to Israel are what they are, and peace lies beyond our reach and perhaps even beyond our lifetime, it's incumbent upon American Jewry, us in this room, to give voice to a vision of coexistence. We must adopt a prophetic stance reflecting the high-minded history of our people, supporting, seeking out, and seeding those conversations that one day might bear fruit even if we ourselves do not eat of them. We must announce to the Jewish people and the world that we reject the false binary between defense of Jewish lives and empathy for Palestinian ones. Countless organizations, Parent Circle, Encounter, Galilee Dreamers, Hanaton, Combatants for Peace, Israeli Democracy Institute, so many organizations are devoted to this work. There's literally an organization called Seeds of Peace, whose sole purpose is to bring young Jews and Arabs in dialogue, to engage in each other's humanity, and hope that in some distant future, they or maybe their children or grandchildren might be able to break the cycle of violence. We can and we must do both. We can support pro-Israel candidates and support peace. We can fight against anti-Semitism and engage in bridge building. We can be vigilant against the present dangers and promote a vision for a better future. We can do both. We can, we must, and we must reject those who tell us otherwise. For lack of vision, the people will perish, teaches the book of Proverbs. American Jewry has a distinct, urgent, and prophetic role to play in this dark hour. As Israel fights a war of survival, we are the ones who must keep the sparks of peace alive, steadfast in our belief that though not today, one day the time will be right, and on that day we will be ready. Shabbat Shalom.